Well, hello there, and welcome to day 150 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Yes, I have gone back to numbering the days, or at least on this occasion, because it is a remarkable checkpoint in terms of, sort of numerical values, as any value that they actually have. I am finally hitting that 150th video. And I'm rather excited by it because I have used it as a justification to watch for genuinely the very first time a film that I have wanted to view and discuss for a decade, if not more. Of course, sort of taking a step back from looking at the channel with the 50th, I of course did the interactive polls and sort of the build up to the viewers choosing what what film I was going to cover. The 100th, of course, was very much based around the award season, so I focused my energies in that direction. And I was thinking, even back then, about the 150th, once I cleared the 100. But of course, as I've mentioned in the last few weeks, my professional circumstances have changed, which means I'm a lot busier and having to put this on the back burner a bit more. So, in spite of everything, I didn't have the opportunity to do anything more exciting than simply choose this. But man, this is a film I've wanted to choose for a long time because, and it has been on that list of films I must cover during this year. As I say, it's been over a decade, partially because I read 1984 when I was 17. Actually, I think I was 15 the first time I read it, and then I was 17 or 18 when I revisited it. And it is definitely up there as one of the defining books of my youth, especially when I was much more an angry, young, revolutionary type personality, very much your revolutionary scholars or armchair revolutionaries, where it's like, we should overturn systems and, oppressive forces are terrible, but I'm not going to do anything about them. But I do love and of course, because of it, I then went on to study philosophy for a time. That's a very different story. But, I always had that passion for sort of political philosophy, and I loved the idea of dystopias and exploring idealized versions of reality, both sort of in the utopic and dystopic visions, and how that reflects as a satire on the world we live in. And so I was very keen to watch Brazil, and for whatever reason, it was just something that was I will get to this, and this year, and this project began, and pretty much from the off, I was like, Brazil will be cleared through this. Because, frankly, Brazil is almost an adaptation of 1984. It's got the same core bones as 1984, and the story structure is very much in keeping, which is one man who feels as though he stands alone as the last remnant of before the oppressive fascistic force consumes everyone, and everyone is under its thumb. But where, of course, 1984 takes itself incredibly seriously, and every line of 1984 is structured to essentially explore fascism from both a philosophical standpoint, whilst also telling us a story and trying to relay the depths of horror within the vision that George Orwell sees fascism to be. This is Terry Gilliam, and Terry Gilliam very much wants to use his experience as a satirist and that much more po-faced look at the same ideas, and still have that aggressive, resentful sense of exploring the world that is around him, that he lives in, through the vision of a horror that he thinks could happen or is happening. But of course, Terry Gilliam, having come through comedy, with the Monty Python troupe, uses much more of that that humour style. And I mean, I got real strong vibes of Meaning of Life from certain sequences from this, particularly the Repo Men sequence really sort of jumped out at me through certain points of this. And of course, he uses that Grand Guignol style of horror, where it's something that's disgusting and disturbing and twisted, and yet almost funny. Very much in the same way as contemporary examples like Reece Shearsmith from sort of League of Gentlemen and Inside Number 9 used to describe things that might not be funny. They're not comedies in terms of here's the punchline, here's the point in which we're supposed to laugh, here's the setup, it's much more, it's funny because it's disturbing, and it's disturbing because it's almost funny. And that strange relationship between humour and horror. And as I said in a video not too long ago, I said about how you can have a satire through cinema that is entirely unfunny, that it is jeering at certain things, certain ideals, certain principles, certain things, certain structures in our society, and yet it is not placed there to make us laugh. It's almost mocking. I suppose in some respects that calls back to sort of the Shakespearean fool, where the Shakespearean fool isn't there to make the audience laugh. He's there to mock the circumstances around him. So of course he plays he in King Lear, for instance, he works really well, where he is simply mocking the monarchical system and the nature of sort of the corruption within King Lear's court. And like I say, in this similar way, this is 1984 by way of Monty Python, and then to the next level it has that true sort of horror tinted vibe. And 1984, if you've seen any adaptation of it, I've seen it, of course, the John Hurt adaptation, and I've seen it performed on stage, and that is, good directors would choose to lean into horror when they do that, and this similarly has moments of genuine horror to it. But maybe not in the way that with 1984 it's about the shock and intensity. With this, it's more about the disturb. The fact that, truly nightmarish visions are being presented to us in a bureaucratic way. We're seeing things that are relatable, in the 1980s, of course, in sort of Thatcherite Britain, you very much get that sense of injustice being presented through bureaucracy. And something like this, when done right, has far-reaching relevance beyond anything it could have been at the time. And, near 40 years on, and this narrative calls to things that are possibly even more relevant now than they were in Brazil, in the time in which Brazil was made. And like I say, that sense of cultural relevance, and the fact that it points out the same issues that we have, where it's about people being paralysed by a system or being exploited by it to the point where someone's life will be taken because of a bureaucratic mistake. But then that same bureaucracy will punish anyone who tries to get justice against that mistake. And even then, if the duty, the mistake came about because of an act, because of something that, frankly, is a battle between fascism and revolutionary. And so therefore, even then, it's like, well, does the person who they originally tried to go after deserve it either? That's debatable. And we do have that sense of V for Vendetta, where it's on the verge of terrorism versus fascism with Robert De Niro's character, Harry... Harry, let's see if I can get the right one, because there's... what is it? Tutton and Button, and it's... And of course, that's where the mix-up comes in, where they take the wrong man. And of course the sense that he, it infers, is the perpetrator of the terrorist acts that are causing them to try and take people, to try and stomp on it. And of course Jonathan Pryce, I haven't even started on Jonathan Pryce, but he is such a great, I mean, it's funny really because through my experience, of course I talked about Jonathan Pryce in The Wife. Jonathan Pryce is an actor who over the last 25 years has popped up throughout things that I've loved, but he is being an older statesman actor. He's like Patrick Stewart or Christopher Lee or Sir Ian McKellen, where or John Hurt, who, when you see the younger version of him, when you see him, like with John Hurt in 1984, as this fresh, young guy, and yet he still has the poise and ability to express and perform. It really shows. You see through, time almost. You see an actor whose abilities existed in the 1980s as strong as they do last year. And it's interesting because I suppose if you sort of start to draw parallels between this and 1984, whereas Winston Smith is a complex character who you're not supposed to root for, but he is symbolic of someone who is free, or at least his will is still resisting the system, and the film is about the system finally crushing the last man who has a free mind. And so therefore, it doesn't matter that the character does or thinks things you don't agree with, it's the fact that he's a free man. Now, Sam Lowry isn't that exactly. It's not, like I say, it's a remake in terms of there are certain key beats and styles and inferences. It's more derived from directly than, and inspired than as I glibly refer to as a remake. But Sam Lowry is not a sympathetic character. He is, in fact, he is someone who represents the self-interested man who, at the beginning of the film, wants to just keep his head down. He wants to be ignored as much as possible, to the point where he refuses promotions. He likes being just ignored. And he's a man who lives in his dreams. He wants to do as little as possible to draw any attention to himself or do anything that's he wants to be buried deep within the system so that they will leave him alone and he can live his dreams. Literally, just be in his dreams. And then when the sort of turn comes for him, when he meets Jill, or sees her, of course, the woman from his dreams, his motivations change and it becomes about pursuing her and finding her, and then all of a sudden he does climb the system and reveal himself. But what you come to realise in the film is that is still not well-intentioned. As in, he's not altruistic. He only sort of exposes himself to society and starts to get involved with people because he is pursuing a woman who exists in his dream. And you could make a really interesting feminist reading or anti-feminist reading on it, about the fact that he idolizes a woman because she's in his dream, and yet when he meets and when he meets her, he does things that he wouldn't necessarily do, but he does them because he's pursuing her, and eventually he sort of breaks her down until she goes with him. And although the film doesn't ever sort of imply that she's not interested in him, it never really gives her the autonomy to be able to decide. The film is very manic and things are happening so quickly in sequence that, when she does go to bed with him, it's almost like a relenting. That she's like, well, he's done all of this stuff, perhaps he's worth my time. But it's interesting because I'm interested in the fact that I don't know if it's supposed to be romantic. There is something, like I say, Graham Guignol about it. There's something that's a little bit warped, and I think that's intentional, because I don't think you're supposed to sympathise with him, because he's not necessarily a good person. There are moments when you feel that he genuinely feels things like guilt, for instance, giving the check to the wife of the man who was murdered, essentially, by the system, inadvertently because of a bureaucratic mistake. and the fact that that plays on his mind again and again and again shows that he is a conflicted character. But I don't know by the end of the film whether you're supposed to think he's someone who you're supposed to feel sorry for him, and of course, being a tragedy, this won't end well. But I don't necessarily know if you're supposed to think, oh, he deserved to win. Let's say he deserved to get everything he wanted, because he is part of the system, and he up to a certain point, he believed in everything the government was doing. He just wanted to also be ignored by it. And of course, he has his mother, who represents the idolatrous, they're constantly having plastic surgery and having acid doctors literally pour acid onto her face to because it's a beauty thing, and it's sort of avaricious, and she's sort of in a clique of old women who are constantly trying to be youthful, and of course they're also indulging themselves in sort of gluttonous acts, and there's something very warped and disturbing about them. And even though he doesn't like her, and he doesn't like her sort of side of society, he is still part of that. And it does have wonderfully haunting sequences, like I say, like the sort of the acid facial treatment, or of course the murder of the innocent man, or the haunting visions that Sam has, or even just moments in the street where you just go, this is almost a blink and you'll miss it moment, and yet it is horrifying. And it is a film that deserves multiple watching. It is one of those ones where I definitely think there are things you will watch again and get fresh things, because it never lets up. It has that sense of everything is constantly moving and manic, and bombs are exploding, or people are running around, and one thing leads to the next. It doesn't give you much time to breathe, and I think that's good. I think it works in this world. And of course then you have things where you're like, well, is this real, or is this in his mind? Of course we have the dream sequence where he sees himself as a hero fighting the great metallic monster that is the system. You have the cleaners guys, like the Bob Hoskins character, and the other one who are they actually heater repairmen, or are they really secret police? What's their involvement? There's so many layers to this, and particularly when you get to the third act and you get to the point in which he is being he's been taken, and you're not sure, and you're left unsure if Jill is alive or not. You're told that she's dead, and he then goes through that torture sequence that leads to the vision, his escape, and then the strange thing where he sees Jill, but it's his mother, who's, now that her plastic surgery's done, looks like Jill, and then she's at the funeral of the friend who kept getting plastic surgery, and it botched plastic surgery that kept more, mutilating her more and more and more, and then she's dead at least in this vision she's dead, and it's the funeral, and then that he falls into the coffin, and then it sort of leads into that potentially hopeful ending, but then it's not, and it's so warped and disturbed, and it's like I say, I think you could easily watch this again and again, and you could write about certain sequences and interpret them in multiple different ways, depending on whether you, like I say, you have a feminist reading of it, or a Marxist reading, or a capitalist reading, or it has so many layers to it. It's like I say, it is like the movie. It is like 1984, movie equivalent, where there's just so much meta text in it that you want to apply to sort of commentary and to what is trying to be said here, and it doesn't give it to you. It just simply allows you to just make your own mind up about lots of aspects of it. So yeah, I genuinely think this is a phenomenal film, very important and phenomenal film, and I'm really glad I finally can say I've seen it. And yeah, it is one of those ones that, Terry Gilliam has, of course, 30 plus years on, has demonstrated that he is a phenomenal director. But I can see why this was the thing that really propelled him from being just one of the Pythons to being this well-respected, standout director who just has such a clear vision and style. Genuinely a great film. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, please hit the like button, comment below and share the video because those all help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded, and do check out my 150 videos. Yes, 150 videos are now on the channel, not including the bonuses, so there's more than 150. So please do check some of them out. I've got some quite exciting things coming up over the next month, so look forward to that. Follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about movies and TV shows, and of course these videos go up on Twitter once they're uploaded to YouTube. Thank you for joining me. Take care.